Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. The first order of business is to review and approve the minutes from the March 8th, 2019 Board of Health meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the meeting minutes?
Yes.
Any questions, comments, concerns?
No.
Okay, so do I have a motion?
A motion to accept the minutes from the March 8th Board of Health meeting.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So approved. Okay, the next item is to review and discuss regulations that would restrict the sale of fruit and candy flavored tobacco products in the town of Shrewsbury to adult-only tobacco establishments. And this item is on the agenda because there's been a lot of interest expressed in this topic. We've received several letters expressing interest and seeing this restriction go forward. So, I see we have a number of people in the audience who may like to speak. I don't know if, DJ, are you coming to speak? And I should remind everyone, this is not a public hearing, it's just a public meeting. So I ask you to keep your comments relatively brief. And please identify yourself.
Yep. My name is DJ Wilson. I'm the Tobacco Control Director at Mass Municipal Association. And so you would have just received a packet handed out to you, and one of the things is a list of cities and towns that have put in the very policy that that hopefully you'll contemplate. And so you'll see from this, we have 147 cities and towns that have put this in place, including Worcester. So the reason for this, and it's all spelled out on the back, but I'll say it in 3 sentences. In 2009, the federal government banned the sale of flavored cigarettes, but only cigarettes. And some of the whereases as to why they did that, the public health rationale is actually, we use in the regulation. And one of the whereases was that this was a starter kit for kids, because they thought this was an easy way for kids to become addicted to nicotine. A few years later, the City of Providence passes a city ordinance that expands that federal order to include all traditional tobacco products, as well as vaping juices, the liquids that go in an e-cigarette or a Juul. And so, the tobacco industry sued them in federal court. The city won, and we're in the same federal court district as the state of Rhode Island. So it's very safe for us to do this policy. Starting around the fall, we started seeing a lot of interest at the federal level from the former FDA commissioner talking about the epidemic of Juul, especially in high schools, and a lot of every city or town has a principal or superintendent that is struggling with what to do with the Juul epidemic in the schools. So this has not been something that the state's tobacco control program has been pushing super hard, but we've seen a real grassroots from local residents, school personnel, and my membership at Mass Municipal coming forward and saying, what can we do about this? So this is an effective policy. One of the reasons that we know it's effective is that the tobacco industry hates it still, even though they lost their lawsuit. And so it would be great if you could contemplate this to add to your regulation.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So anyone else who would like to make a few comments?
Good morning. Again, my name is Tina Grasowski. I coordinate the Central Mass Tobacco-Free Community Partnership, which is a grant-funded program at UMass Medical School. And we work on reducing smoking and secondhand smoking of all of Massachusetts. As you know, this policy, the flavor regulation that DJ just spoke about, is really important because the new look of nicotine these days is what's really affecting young people. I am a member of the SCAPE, Shrewsbury Coalition for Prevention, and the last conversations that we've been having have been around the Juul product, which DJ just spoke about. If you haven't ever seen one up close, this is what it looks like. Looks like a flash drive and itself, and then it has a little flavor pod that goes inside of it. This is where the nicotine is. The problem with these is that when you heat it up, it's got lots of chemicals that are released. The propylene glycol itself goes into the lungs. It's not digestible. And then the flavoring, which is the most attractive part of these products that young people are using so much these days, and is chemical as well. So this isn't fresh mango juice from Market Basket. This is a chemical that's been known to cause lung infections like bronchitis, and there was a new article, I can send it to you recently, that they have found that there's quite a few toxins that can be found in the vape pens that can lead to respiratory infections. And in fact, I was just at a meeting where a UMass Medical School resident had a young patient just within the past couple weeks that had a pneumonia. They couldn't quite figure out what kind of pneumonia it was. When they did a culture, it turned out it was from a virus that had grown inside the vape pen that this young patient had been using. So this isn't just like on the news someplace else. We're really seeing it in the medical clinicals environment at UMass. So these are the products. This is what the youth are using, and this flavor restriction would put these products, as you know, out of the hands of young people in the retail environment, which is so important.
Okay, thank you. Representative Kane?
Good morning. I'm Hannah Kane, State Representative, but also a member of the Shrewsbury Coalition for Addiction Prevention Education. I wrote to you because I see that we need to be working at all levels, federal, state, and local government, in terms of combating this issue. The number one thing we can do from a healthcare perspective is prevent issues. And so this is chiefly for me, not only an issue because I think that the tobacco industry, the more that they can have eyes on their products, the more that people are going to be enticed to use them, young people. But also, as a member of the community, a number of kids have written to me concerned that they go into the gas station, the convenience store, and they see these products there. And they're getting mixed messages. They're being told that this is not something they should be doing, and yet it is right in front of them at all times. So I believe that this is a positive step that we can make. I am very grateful that you're taking up this conversation. And again, you know, we just raised the age to 21 in Massachusetts last year. We had major legislation that we passed. This is another important step that we can do on the local level to make sure that we are preventing our youth from being targeted by the tobacco industry. The tobacco industry knows that when they can hook somebody at a young age, that becomes a lifelong user. That is not good for their health, and I think it's important for us to make sure that we are not sending youth in Shrewsbury a mixed message, that we're very direct and clear that this is not something that they should be doing. So thank you for taking it up.
Thank you. Selectman Cassavant?
Morning. I'm Beth Cassavant. I'm a member of the Board of Selectmen, and I'd like to just thank you for taking up the issue. Looking at it, I believe that we have a public health crisis with the e-cigarettes and the Juul. I come here on behalf of my colleagues. We've unanimously supported a letter that we sent to you urging you to take action on this. And also, as a parent of 2 teenage children, I know that this is something that they see daily and struggle with daily. I think we have a very unique situation in Shrewsbury where our middle school kids are continually walking through our town, the town center, where there are retail establishments that are selling these Juuls, and they're right there in plain sight. And I believe that we are eroding the progress that we've made in messaging and telling our kids that nicotine is not good for you. It's an addictive substance. Don't start smoking. And we're not seeing the combustible cigarettes anymore. Instead, we're seeing kids just becoming attracted to these small devices that look cool. They're easy to hide. Adults often mistake them for some sort of technology or flash drive. And I don't think the children are aware of the damaging effects on their health, that a Juul pod can contain as much nicotine as 12 cigarettes. And also that they're being marketed to kids in a way that makes them attractive. The flavoring, not necessarily something that an adult would go after. So I just believe that it's very important for us as leaders in this community to send that message to our kids that, you know, this is something that's not intended for your use. And we see something wrong at a higher level with the way that the companies are marketing to you. And we're making this decision because it's important to us that your long-term health isn't impacted by companies that are looking to make money and find new users and lifelong users in our children. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you. Yes?
Good morning, my name is Jen Rifkin. I'm the Clinical Director at Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services. And I wanted to speak to, again, thank you for considering this regulation, or at least discussing the regulation. We obviously know that there's been a dramatic increase in the use of youth using vape products. It's a huge issue in terms of long-term consequences, because right now it appears that vaping itself puts youth at a 300 times greater risk to use combustible cigarettes. So we have that as a long-term public health issue. In terms of the flavoring issue, we have almost half of youth reporting that the reason that they are trying vapes is because of the flavoring. In addition, 80% of young people, 80% of people under the age of 24 are using flavored vapes. You take that away, I feel like that's a tremendous public health prevention policy. I think it's a real critical policy in terms of both the sort of immediate and long-term tobacco prevention. So I thank you for considering that.
Thank you. Yes?
Hi, my name is Barbara Therian. I'm a district manager for Seasons Corner Market in Shrewsbury. I'm not up here saying that smoking's good, because obviously it's not, but I just want to let you guys know what we do at the store level to make sure that the tobacco or jewel doesn't get in the youth's hand. Our company policy is anybody that comes in our store under the age of 40, that looks under the age of 40, we ID. Our company does inspections twice a month. If somebody does not ID a customer, that employee is suspended from our store. They have to go through another training process. When we hire our employees, we make sure that they get trained. We're asking everybody for an ID, and that we're just in the process of checking that throughout our customers. Most of our customers that come in now, they do buy Juul, and they do buy tobacco products. But if the kids are getting the Juuls, it's either from the adults or online. I can guarantee you they're not getting them from a convenience store or a gas station. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think at this point in time, the process is for the board to discuss the issue in terms of whether to bring it forth to a public hearing if there is interest in that. As we've heard, we've received letters from Representative Kane from the Shrewsbury Board of Selectmen, from Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services, and from Dr. Nandana Kanzra of St. Vincent Medical Group in support of this potential regulation. So at this point, does the board have any, I guess my feeling is that, given the great level of interest in this issue, that it deserves a public hearing to be heard properly. So that would be my position on the subject.
I would agree.
Me too. Do we need to propose regulations so that right?
Right,
So
so,
that at the public hearing, they know what we're.
Right, so we would provide draft regulations and have those available for the public and obviously for the board to review, and then you would have that as part of your public hearing.
So we review first, then public hearing. Yeah.
Right, we've seen this proposed regulation before. I assume it would be very similar, if not identical, to the previous ones.
I'm not actually sure if it's identical. I know that there's been conversation about potentially including menthol, which hasn't in the past. So I think, we could, work with our partners at the state to make sure that we have the most up-to-date regulation for you folks to take a look at. And then certainly we can make changes from there.
Okay, so at this point, I think we need to take a vote in terms of proposing the regulation go to public hearing. So do I have a motion?
Yes.
Do you have a second?
Yes.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we will receive a draft regulation from the Alliance and schedule a public hearing at a convenient time.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is to review and act on a proposed revision to Phase 5, Section 7, baseline of footprint. Request the Board of Health for permitting concurrence at the Shrewsbury landfill, 620 Hartford Turnpike, Shrewsbury, Mass. 01545. Requested by Don Musial, PE General Manager, Wheelabrator Shrewsbury, and Jeff Harlan, Town Engineer.
Good, how are you?
Andy's over here, everybody. You know, we had sent
Thank
in
you.
the letter, and the letter had the small figure. I thought it'd be good to have a, and that's the same figure that was in the letter.
Thank you.
No, we'll talk when we get back. We'll do it electronically. Thanks, Joshin. We can share, if you want us, we can share. Yeah, we can share.
We have that.
Okay.
That's the full model, right? Me electronically? Thank you. Yeah, but we can send it and it's fine.
Okay, could you identify yourselves, please?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having us here today. We appreciate it. My name is Don Musial. I'm the general manager of Wheelabrator Shrewsbury. We have operated the Shrewsbury landfill since 1987. I've been with the site since about 1996.
Good morning, my name's Chris Sturgis. I'm the Environmental Health and Safety Manager for Wheelabrator. I've been with the facility for 3 years now.
Jeff Holland, DPW Director and Town Engineer, Shrewsbury.
Okay, so what we've submitted to the Board of Health within a letter dated April 22nd, which you all have, is a request for permitting concurrence today. And so there's certain permitting paths that we go through with the board for the ash monofill on the town property. So this path that we're asking for today is associated with the next phase of construction, the next cell of construction of baseliner at the site. Presently, if we look at the larger map that I've handed you, it shows the outline of the entire facility in bold, which is about 200 acres in total, 100% owned by the town of Shrewsbury. Most of the top part of that page is fully built out at this point, enclosed and capped, and it's the location of the town's solar farm as well. To the south of, to the bottom of that page, towards Centec Boulevard, was where the Phase 5 development was at the site. Phase 5 was a permitting effort from 2007 to 2010. The board was very involved with that at the time. It was all developed and built in 2010, 2011, and 2012. We built baseliners sequentially over the course of that life. So the entire Phase 5 footprint was approved by the board at that time in 2008, around there. And so we've built out the first cells of that baseliner. We built out the second cell of that. And so what we're looking to do now is build out the third cell, which is called Section 7. So Phase 5 was Section 5, Section 6, and Section 7. And so what you're looking at in front of you on the smaller plan is the footprint of what Section 7 baseliner is. And so these were, the way the permitting path works is we have a site assignment for the entire property, which was originally granted in 1971, was last modified for the Phase 5 development for the entire property. Within that site assignment, there's a requirement for any construction plans to come before the Board of Health for approval on an ongoing basis. So each time we want to do a construction, whether it's baseline or a capping, we come back to the Board of Health for approvals of construction drawings. So what we're proposing right now is a path similar to what we did for the metals recovery system that's now operating on site, that we'll be coming to the board for construction approvals for this next baseliner cell, but there's some changes that we'd like to make to that baseliner cell, some of the alignment, some of the limits there. And that's what the small plan shows, is some proposed changes to what was approved back in 2008, 2009 by the board. Partly it increases the footprint in some areas, and other areas it makes it smaller. And so similar to, like I said, for the metals recovery, when we go to the DEP to review that, they look to the Board of Health to make a determination of is a modification required to the site assignment. And because you're changing limits of a landfill, the DEP makes sure they want you, as the Board of Health, to have that control and that they don't make that determination. And for our part, we'll still come back to the board in a month or in 2 months for all the construction plans. What we're looking for from the board today is concurrence that there's a site assignment modification is not required for these adjustments of the footprint, so that we can include that in our submittal to DEP. And part of the reason for that is if a site assignment modification were to be required for whatever reason, we would then have to go through another MEPA process at the state before we went to the DEP as well. So that's why we're here today, is to request concurrence.
Okay. So, yeah, I noticed in the letter you mentioned, followed by a permit any necessary approval from MEPA. So you're saying that if there is no requirement to change the site assessment, then there's no reason to go through a MEPA review?
Correct. We still may go to MEPA, but not for a MEPA review. It's a, not a project of notice change. It's like a request for a similar, like a concurrence, that we do not have to go through their process.
So you don't need an environmental notification for it?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It's a request for advisory opinion.
Okay.
That's what it's termed.
Any questions from the board?
I do kind of have one question. Sure. Just related to distance that the landfill can be from the road.
Yes. Yep. So from the property line, it's a setback of 100 feet. And from a wetland, it's a setback of 100 feet as well. And so the alignment that was originally proposed back in the 2000s was well inside some of those limits. And really, we were trying to minimize how much soil needed to be moved around on site, because part of the cell is located on top of the old town municipal landfill. And also the area on the left side of the page that's more shown in green, we had reserved that area for a potential future maintenance garage and offices on site. We'd never built that, and we don't intend to, so we can take up that area closer to Route 20. But we'll stay all outside any setbacks that are required.
Steve, just had a quick question.
Sure.
And just to confirm, all this is lined, all this activity is lined underneath and following current standards?
Correct. The entire, since Wheelabrator's been the operator on the site, all areas of the ash landfilling have Mass DEP approved liner systems. The original liner systems are 1980s and 90s era. Starting in the 2000s, we're required to have double liner systems. So it consists of a layer of natural clay, geosynthetic clay, an impermeable liner, another layer of drainage material, a layer of clay, another liner, and then soils on top of that, and then ash.
And then are you collecting any leachate of significance?
Yes, so the amount of, so anything that contacts the ash that's on the site, whether it's through stormwater runoff or through moisture that's within the ash itself, we collect. We have pumping systems that then discharge to the town of Shrewsbury sewer system, ultimately to the Westboro treatment plant. Also on site, there's groundwater interceptors. So the town's old landfill is unlined. And during the construction in 2010 and 2011 of Phase 5, we built a 50-foot deep interceptor trench, a downgrading of the town landfill, to capture any water that may come through the town landfill. And so we collect that as well and discharge that as wastewater.
And then just finally, do you have any significant gas that's generated in the capped parts?
Yeah, so on the Wheelabrator side of the site, there's no gas, because ash is the residue that's left over after the burning of the trash at the waste energy facilities. So all the organics are burned and gone. Even something like wallboard or something like that, that wouldn't be released in let's say a basic environment such as ash. So we have no gas generation on site.
And then the old landfill, you monitor, obviously there's monitoring all around.
Yes, lots of wells.
Is the old landfill generating any gas?
Not anymore. So we monitor that as part of our environmental monitoring. We monitor any vents that the town landfill had. Most of those have been decommissioned at this point. We monitor that twice a year, I believe, Chris, correct?
Semi-annual.
Yes, a semi-annual. We also have to, by regulation, we monitor underneath any of the buildings and offices on site for any gas buildup or anything like that, and we're not detecting anything.
Okay, thanks.
And again, to the same question, the town landfill stopped operating in 1987. So it's pretty old trash as well, so probably in the first few years, there was some venting, but we don't see it now.
So the primary reason this modification does not require a site assignment modification is because it's such a small area, it's 0.8 acres, I believe?
Correct, it's
Yeah,
0.8
okay.
acres out of the 37 acres, or almost 38 acres of just Phase 5.
Okay.
Out of the entire site, there's another 36 acres of lined cells as well, too.
Okay.
But it gets the site about another year of capacity.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the fact that this site assignment does not need to be modified?
Yes, a motion to, I think the language is approve the concurrence.
Yes,
Is
the
that-
site assignment modification is not required for this.
Okay, I make that motion.
I second that motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you very much. We'll see you within the next couple months again.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is to review and discuss the citizens petition regarding hexavalent chromium mitigation efforts requested by Shilpa, and I don't want to murder your name, Diachakle, 4 Ptarmigan Drive, Shrewsbury, Mass. Good morning. And I just wanted to let you know that the board has received all of the PowerPoint presentation, all the background materials, so we've all reviewed that information ahead of time. So I would just ask that you basically try to summarize your issue within less than 10 minutes possibly.
Yes, I was planning to go through the slide presentation in about 7 to 8 minutes, if that's okay.
Yeah, if it's to that level, sure.
Okay. Thank you for letting us speak before you. My name is Rashmi, and I'm from Precinct 1. And we are here, I'm speaking on behalf of a group of residents in Shrewsbury, and we are here to express our concern about the high levels of hexavalent chromium in our town water supply. So I will go through this. And so what is hexavalent chromium? It's a known carcinogen that was made infamous by the Erin Brockovich case. And it's an odorless and tasteless chemical that can be hazardous to health with chronic exposure. So what is the exact issue? In 2015, EWG flagged Shrewsbury Town water wells as having high levels of hexavalent chromium. At that point, they were at 3.8 parts per billion. And this was as a result of the EPA mandated nationwide water testing. And those were the levels. So to put that in perspective or give a context, the health goal recommended by California Office of Environmental Health and Hazard Assessment came up with a health goal of 0.02 parts per billion. And as a comparison, the nationwide average of the top 10 cities is about 0.06 parts per billion. And for the Mass state, the average is about 0.14. So we can see that 3.5 is way higher than all these numbers. So where do we stand today? This was in 2015. In 2017, based on the town water reports, our values were between 3.2 and 5.5. And in 2019, when the most recent report was presented to us, it was 3.5. So we have been pretty much in the same range. The contamination basically comes from 3 out of the 7 wells, which are Home Farm 6.1, 6.3, and 6.4. The remaining 4 wells do not have any problem. And these wells have the levels anywhere between 6.5 and 19. And that, because all the well water goes into the water treatment plant and then gets, I guess, dispersed to the town, that's what brings the levels up to 3.5. So a little bit about the standards for hexavalent chromium. As of now, EPA does not have a limit defined for just hexavalent chromium. They have a limit that's defined for combined chromium, which is chromium 3 and 6, and that is 100 ppb. California had the same limit set to 50 ppb for total chromium. And then in 2010, when the OEHHA came up with the recommendation for 0.02 parts per billion, that's supposed to be the health goal. And the state is generally supposed to adopt a number which is close to the health goal, even if not the same as the health goal. But California adopted a limit of 10 parts per billion in 2014, which was about 500 times the health goal stipulated by OEHHA. And this was mainly because of aggressive lobbying and political and economic feasibility reasons, not because the number was incorrect. And this limit has been temporarily revoked because of when they adopted the 10 ppb, apparently the whole feasibility testing in the process wasn't done. So it has been temporarily revoked, and California is back at the 50 ppb total chromium limit. But the understanding is that they are now working on coming up with a new limit specific to hexavalent chromium, and it's supposed to be very close to the one that was retired. It was just a process issue, not because the number was incorrect. Following this, New Jersey and North Carolina also came up with their health goal limits, which were 0.06 parts per billion. These were independent agencies. It was the New Jersey Drinking Water Quality Institute and North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. So all of these folks have come up with independent recommendations, and those were 0.06 as well. So much lower than what we have here. So talking about the health effects of hexavalent chromium, with chronic exposure, meaning long-term exposure, hexavalent chromium can lead to ingestion of hexavalent chromium through drinking water, can lead to oral cancer, stomach cancer, intestinal cancer. In addition, it can also cause reproductive problems or liver damage. As far as the risk numbers, I guess with the 0.02 parts per billion that was stipulated, the risk was supposed to be minimal, which is 1 in a million over the lifetime of a person drinking that water. With 3.5 parts per billion, we spoke with the director of OEHHA to kind of understand what our risk really is for a 3.5 ppb number. And we were told that it is 1 in 5,714 people. So for a Shrewsbury population of 35,000 people, it would lead to about 7 or so people getting cancer over their lifetime. And that is not a very trivial number. It's also, these are numbers for healthy people. It can be for young children, pregnant women, or any other vulnerable populations. This number can be higher. Again, it doesn't also account for other water usages, such as showering, which is dermal and inhaled chromium from those. Although they are minimal, they're still present. As far as what can be done, I mean, there is an individual household mitigation possible. The typical carbon filters do not filter hexavalent chromium. What we need is something called reverse osmosis systems. Those are systems that typically sit under the sink. They are expensive. And the biggest problem is for every 1 gallon of water filtered, there's about 2 to 3 gallons of water wasted. So which means if every resident starts doing that, Shrewsbury town, which is already strained for resources, it's going to get worse. Also, it doesn't really mitigate the problems with public places such as libraries, schools, and other such places where we are still drinking the town water. So the solution really needs to be put in at a town level and not at individual household level. So that brings me to what the town has done so far, and we would really like to acknowledge what they've done so far. They've been very proactive in addressing the issue. They've done 3 different things. So the first is to figure out the source of the contamination, which they have been more or less successful in doing, but unfortunately it had been determined that it's not possible to prevent that plume from getting into our water supply. So that exercise didn't really help with reducing our levels. They've also been trying to test a biological filtration system on the test wells. Unfortunately, the testing had to be terminated due to problems getting proper samples on the test wells. And the third thing they are working on is 2 new wells. One of them is due to be commissioned sometime later this year, and that's supposed to be a replacement for Seawell number 5. And they have also got approval for another well, which should be commissioned sometime from our understanding, in the next 18 to 24 months, and eventually replace 2 of the offending wells, which are Home Farm 6-1 and 6-3. With that, they're hoping for the levels to go down to between 1 and 2 ppb, which again is not very definite, just because they do not know what the new wells would have for chromium 6 levels. And 1 to 2 ppb is still pretty high on the charts based on all the health recommendations. So given that all this has been done, what exactly are we asking for? Although the town has been doing a lot, if we look at the history over the past few years, our levels haven't changed at all. They're still hovering around the 3.5 range. The testing first came into light 2015. We have reports available as far back as 2012, but I guess the contamination has been around ever since the wells have been around, which means we are potentially drinking that water for up to 20 years now. And our concern is that we just need to escalate or expedite this process. And one of our suggestions was to retire Home Farm well 6.4 as well, because once all the 3 offending wells are out of circulation, our water quality will automatically improve. So that was our first request, was to see if we could retire Home Farm 6.4 and get the process started to approve a replacement well for that. That would take all 3 of the wells out of circulation. And the second thing was a request for the town to continue filtration testing, biological filtration testing aggressively, so that in the event that the new wells still have hexavalent and chromium levels in them, we would have a system ready to be deployed and usable for the new wells. Again, we appreciate everything the town has done, but I'm here to urge the Board of Health and the town to expedite the process to make our water as healthy as possible, since the 3.5 ppb from a chronic perspective has to be taken seriously as a health hazard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay.
At this time.
Well, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to make a few comments on the topic? Mr. Tedeschi?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Appreciate the opportunity to be before the board. I had spoken with this group of folks a little bit earlier before the petition had come forth, and I certainly agree with a lot of this they have said, and the town has been proactive on this issue, but I can certainly give you a little background, a little bit more clarity on some of these items. They are correct. Our present range is around 3.5 ppbs, parts per billion. But basically, the standard here and in 49 other states is 100 parts per billion, which incorporates trivalent or chromium-3, hexavalent, and chromium-6. And the reason that we have 149 points of the state was because chromium-6 can, in the body, revert back to trivalent, so it's a back and forth switch in the body. So EPA, along with Mass DEP, wants to always know what total chromium, that's one of the reasons. Second reason was it was mainly air inhalation from welding and working around stainless steel materials back in the 60s and 70s that this 100 came about over there. California in 1977 set a 50 part per billion because of some issues in the state. Then, as these folks had referred to, in Hinckley, California, a town in Mojave Desert, California, about 1900, there was an issue with a compressor station run by Pacific Gas and Electric that brought natural gas from Texas into California. In the 50s and 60s, they used a rust inhibitor, including including the hexavalent chromium, which they dumped into unlined basins, and got into private wells. They dumped about 360 million gallons over the 50s, 60s, into the 70s. Problems came up, and then there was a lawsuit against Pacific Gas and Electric that resulted in $330 million tort suit against Pacific Gas and Electric. Today, they're still working on that plume. It's about 8 miles long, about 2 miles wide. Hinckley, California, their levels are about 580 parts per billion. That's what we're talking about there. Base levels in that area, 1.9 to 3.8, as you do have a lot in that area. California did try to come up with a standard of 2.5 in 1999, I believe it was, or 1996, based on a rodent study in Germany. EPA had thrown that out because of validity issues in that study in Germany. So then they reverted back to the 50. And then a number of years ago, they had, I think 2014, to go to a standard of 10, based on all this information over there, which then got reverted because there was pressure from private industry, some of the water utilities, basically because when you come up to some of these public health goals, you have to be able to get them into process over there. So because of all these problems that they had in California, they went to the national, I think it was Health and Human Services, and says Cal EPA, and a couple of senators in California said, can you run a toxology study, which they did, complete in 2008. So they came up with what's known as a public health goal, 0.02 that you see referred to. That is not a health or a water standard anywhere in the United States. There is no water system in the United States that is trying to get at 0.02 for any standard anywhere. So the standards remain 100 here, 50 in California as of present time over there. And the town has been very proactive, as these folks mentioned, and we continue to be, because the town, again, does not want any contaminants. We want to be at zero, just like everyone else would like to be at zero. And personally, for me, I have 36,000 folks in town. I have young mothers with children coming to me asking me about Hexchrome. Both my kids live in Southern California. My son he lives in Riverside, where it's 1.36. So on a personal matter and also a professional matter, I'm involved in it. I got extended family that lives in town. We've been in town since 1914. We've been in 100 years in town, so I got multiple generations here. So I have to talk to my family members with their children about the water also. So on a personal, professional level, yes, I am very involved with Hexchrome, and I am very involved in trying to resolve it. Town did take measures in trying to find the source, which is ongoing presently there. We work with DEP to trying to find the source. The source is apparently in Worcester. It's up in the Plantation Street area. They have not definitely defined it. The reason that the town can't get involved is that we're in Worcester, we're another community, and we're also on private property, so DEP is working on that down there. We have tried to minimize well use as much as we have. There's 6.1, 6.3, 6.4. There's 3 wells that pick up on the Hexchrome. The majority of it goes down Bowditch Drive. It goes between the Metso building and the Table Talk building down there. We have high readings there. Goes diagonal, it heads to Lake Quinsigamond. We have a small branch that comes off to ours over there. So what we've done, try to do, is put additional wells in. We put a new well in on Suit Street property. But again, these take 18 to 24 months to get in. We're in the matter of trying to get a 5-day pump test right now, because we have to be able to run 2 wells together. Otherwise, it does us no good to have just one well run. We have a new well that we've put in on the home farm, but unfortunately, we can't put them in exact locations because we have to have a 400-foot radius. We try to move it over any closer, we're into the building on Metso. So we're somewhat limited there. So we just can't simply shut off the 3 wells over there. And we can't simply get water from Worcester, because Worcester is, I would say, 2/3 comes from the Nashua River Basin, 1/3 from Blackstone. And that's an interbasin transfer. It has to be approved in Boston, for one. If you put in water here, it has to go to the Concord River Basin where we discharge. Also would have to get approved by the Worcester City Council, which is about, it's going through our wastewater permit. I'd say it's about a 2-year process to get water from Worcester over there. So we're trying to minimize as much as we can. We did try to test on a biological system. We try to test at 90 parts per billion, because for us is, yeah, we can treat to 3 and all of a sudden it goes up to 10. We have to be able to treat at higher levels over there. But believe it or not, the Morinton wells didn't show any more hex chrome over there, so we could not get definitive results up on that. You know, for pilot testing in the future, we'll have to see where that brings us over there. And I would not want to really get rid of all those wells, to be honest with you, because you don't know if the plume is going to move or change. So you might need these wells to divert some of that flow there too, and keep it back in there. Right now, we're about 23 to 25%. The town water comes from those wells. 75% does not down there. So we try to mitigate it there, and we're working on the wells that we have here. But I'd just like to say that, you know, the 0.02 gets thrown out an awful lot of times out there. But again, it's a risk assessment number on that. It's not a water quality standard here or in California or anywhere else over there. The 0.06 that was also mentioned, that's North Carolina and New Jersey. Some agencies there, based on that 2008 study, came up from that over there. And the reason I say that, because it's not practical, it's economically practical or technologically practical to get all water systems in the country down to 0.02. And I would also mention to you folks there, as far as I know, I have not seen or heard of any case in the United States where we're below 100 causing a health issue solely related to hex chrome. I will also mention that Honolulu is mentioned a lot in these conversations because they have 2 parts per billion. A group of citizens went with the 0.02 to the Board of Public Health in Honolulu. And Honolulu, I had mentioned to them since 1975, gastrointestinal cancer has dropped in Honolulu, even though we've been at 2 parts per billion out there. So controversy remains there. Controversy remains in Phoenix, Arizona at 7.6. There's been no credible medical basis saying that these regions here have had any higher proportionally of cancer, the regions that have not, including where my son lives in Riverside, California, 1.36, compared to folks that have basically at 0. They have not shown anything to this point there. And again, we're basing it on 70 years of usage, 2 liters of water per day. That's what we talk about there. And the other studies, I will also caution you folks that we talk about 1 in a million, but if you look at statistics, if you had every one, I think it's about 8,500 public water systems in California, if every single one was at 0.02 and below, that would prevent about 12 theoretical deaths in California, and you have a population of 40 million folks in there. So that's kind of the range that we're talking about there. We see it in the town as that, yes, we want to be at 0, and we want to work toward that, which we are, but the 0.02 to us is not the most relative thing. We have to work through the regulations. We have to work through the state, the EPA, to really get a formula to try to come up with success on these things over there. So we're trying to get away from those sources as much as we can, trying to minimize usage on that there, and work with the state and agencies as much as we can, and obviously keep our residents involved in the process as we go through it down there. And thank you for the time, appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions.
Sure, go
While
ahead.
he's still here.
Sure.
Just for the audience, your public water supply is under jurisdiction of Mass DEP.
Correct.
Your new treatment plant, did that give you any new capability to monitor and/or treat hex chrome?
No, well, the plant is a biological filtration plant for manganese. It's a little different process on hex chrome. Most times, it's treated by an ion exchange process, either weak or strong base over there, because reverse osmosis in the water industry is not really cost-effective to try to do that. We were hoping, I say hoping over there, that with filtration, we might be able to reduce it by 1 part per billion, but we see the same before and after, so we do not. So if we do anything, it has to be at the wellheads, not at the treatment plant, because you wouldn't want to treat the whole 3 or 3.5 million, you'd rather treat a smaller. And to replace that usage, I'm talking about 1 million gallons a day is what I'm talking about, really, that you'd have to supplement to try to get that. In the winter, about 800. In the summer, you're about 1.2, so somewhere in between, when you're close to 1 million there.
And you mentioned you're looking at 2 new wells, hopefully, to come online?
Yeah. We have one it takes a process because you have to drill a series of wells. You have to find water, one. You have to be able to need the infrastructure. So the state has to approve each part of the process over there. So now we have an approved site on Sewell Street, We're trying to do a 5-day pump test where we had one problem already doing that. In other words, we have to run an existing well and that for 5 consecutive days to see the drawdown of the 2 wells and the influence one has on the other. That's what we're doing, trying to do right now. And I'm hoping that'd be about 500 gallons a day if we can do that. But we will also need backup wells. If wells do go down for some reason, we need backup to get, if you go down in the middle of summer, you have to have some backup to it up on that. Now, we drilled another well on our home farm site that showed no hex chrome initially. But again, all these wells are close. When I talk about 6-1 and 6-3, these wells are only 50 feet apart. So you can see why, yeah. And the other one's only 200 feet from it, because when we do replacement wells, DEP had a regulation, replacement can only be within 50 feet. Now they have it within 250 feet, so I can't put it like a mile away up on that. So I'm limited in sites where we can go up on that. And we have to own or control a 400-foot radius, which is about 16 acres of property there. So I can't just put it in another place over there. So we have to be cognizant, you know, where we think the plume is, where it is in relation to other wells over there. And levels change at the well, so it depends on what wells I'm running, you know, what time of year. So the numbers are somewhat, a little bit irrelevant, but you have to put all the data together to really find out what it really means.
And then finally, the process of the river basin exchange that you were talking about with the
Yes.
city of Worcester.
Yep.
Is that's an ongoing process?
Whenever you go, you're gonna either buy or produce water, and where you treat it, where you have it treated, and then where you discharge is different basin, that goes to what's known as an interbasin transfer. And that goes to a group in Boston, the Water Resource Commission, that has to approve all that, because you're moving water from one basin to another. So that becomes an issue, and a timely issue to try to do that. So Worcester isn't really a viable source to us, other than an emergency to us, you know. And when I say emergency, I mean a few days or a week over there, not 2 years.
Right.
So you have to get approval there. It has to be approval through city council. We just did a wastewater agreement to try to tie into the sewer system in Worcester. I'm saying that was almost probably 2 years to try to get that, and we tried to expedite that. The town wasn't sitting here just letting that go. We tried to push that with that down there. And when Worcester sells us water, it affects their permit too. So and for future growth in Worcester and what they're doing, they might not want to do that either. Yeah, so there's a lot of moving parts. It's not just call up Worcester and get water, MWA and get water. It's involved over there. So the town's trying to depend on ourselves. The best goal to us would be, can we identify it and get treated off-site or in situ over there? I mean, that's still a long ways off, you know, because now unfairly, the town's penalized, and its residents, including these folks, are penalized because some other party in another neighboring community has like contaminants, you know, into our stream basically over there. So we're dealing with the ramifications of this right now and trying to deal with the ramifications to get this expedited as soon as we can.
Are you going to remain as a consultant after your retirement?
Well, that has to be decided, I guess, Phil. But thank you for the offer, though.
Okay. Maria, you had a question?
I have a couple questions. So the expectation or the anticipation is that the contamination would be ongoing,
I would say so.
right?
I mean, if I had to guess, I think you can say this in public over there, is that as we test for more and more contaminants, we go to levels, yes, we can pick up stuff, even that we're testing okay now. A year from now, I could say, I'm out of compliance with something.
Yep.
And that's how the first treatment plant in 1988 got involved, because we had trichloroethylene from some of these same facilities we're talking about today, and the limit was 15. All of a sudden, it got lowered to 5. So the town was in violation. We had about 10 at that time, so we had to build a treatment plant. Some of these items that we talk about today were okay. All of a sudden, another year or two, all of a sudden it's 5. All of a sudden, EPA comes back, it's 2. We're out of compliance. Now we have to come up with some treatment. And treatment processes, for one, doesn't always mean that we could treat the other processes at the same time. But I would have to guess, they tell me that it's a mature plume. In other words, there's no new material going into it. It's been there probably since the 50s or 60s over there. That well went in 1969. Yeah. So we only picked up chromium. Any certified lab in Massachusetts only tests down to 10.
Yep.
So if I send any samples today, they're gonna tell me it's undetectable
Fine, yep.
for right now. And actually, I should also mention the state or EPA, no one's making us sample. There's no requirement for us to sample. There's no requirement for us to do anything from any government agency. The town's just doing this proactively. We sent samples ourselves to the same California agency that ran the UCMR 2s out of Monrovia, California, on our own to say, because I send it to Massachusetts Lab, they tell me it's non-detectable, they only go down to 10. I said, I need something that goes down to basically 0 on that. So that's why the town, at our own expense, sends out samples over there. And our own expense, we put in monitoring wells, and then we got involved with Metso. We informed them they had to do work on their site to identify if they're the source or is it just passing through their property over there. DEP has also stepped up to the plate to drill monitoring wells on Bowditch and Plantation Street to try to help us out the best we can on that.
Okay, so assuming contamination would be ongoing, the intent of the new wells is that they would be in a different location, or they would have a mitigation system that would work for this and manganese?
All manganese will be treated at the plant
At the
on
pla-
that.
at the
So
plant,
one
not
of
at the-
these wells that I'm talking about is off-site.
Yeah.
It's at the Sewell property. We also have wells on North Quincy and on Lambert, but it's not a good water source to put additional wells. So this other one that we put in is as close to the other 2 wells that are as close to 0 as possible, that we move it down. There's always a possibility that the plume, if we shut off 3 wells, that the new well that we put in will draw that down. That's why I say you might need these as a mitigation in the future. I mean, running at low levels just to keep it down, because we have 1 well off already. 1 out of 3 we basically have turned off for right now as an experiment. So we experiment around what we're running in levels, try to keep it away. But sometimes what happens is then it bounces up the level up in the next well over there. This one comes down, that one goes up, this one gets down, and that one goes up. So I try to keep them in that so we get as close to 3 as we can,
So let me try again a different question, but maybe the same question.
maybe.
Maybe. You can't just put wells anywhere.
Right.
Right, you have to
Right.
find water. All right.
Yeah, first of all, it has to be water,
that.
yeah, it has to be water where we're going.
Right.
And we try to get on town-owned or town-controlled property.
Okay.
Too, rather than try, and the town, a number of years ago, looked at alternate waters, why I say alternate, look for sources in town. If you kind of remember, we had an article at town meeting up on Masonic property, put a bedrock well in, that got defeated at town meeting a number of years ago. It's gonna be 200,000 gallons a day off of Prospect Street. So we did try to get out of this basin.
Right.
For various reasons. I think it was the Friends of Prospect Park and other reasons. They didn't want that up there. So we didn't. So the town has tried that, but there's not many locations in town where to go. And we tried, now we just built $12 million on a treatment plant, so we have central location to have wells all over and try to separately treat them doesn't really make a lot of feasible sense.
Yeah.
So we have to stay within the basin. We're in the Blackstone Basin, we're in the sub-basin of the Blackstone, so we're into this area for right now. And that's where the most water is, but by far. I mean, that's a great water source. You can argue in the contaminants, but on quantity, yeah, it's very hard to duplicate that or find that. Most communities, if you find a 200,000 gallon a day well, that's tremendous. When we put in the 6-1 well, that was rated at 3 million gallons a day, just 1 well, to give you some idea what I'm talking about. To replicate that is, it's very difficult on that.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a comment there. You were asking for public comment, right?
Well, if you could keep it really brief, because we have a big, fairly large agenda.
Sure. Yeah, no, I just wanted to, Brian Moss, 16 Ruthven Circle, Precinct 8 Town Meeting Member. I just wanted to commend the work that the Water Department has been doing to be proactive in this issue, and also commend the citizens that are bringing it forward, because this is really a wake-up call for Shrewsbury. Because if we look at this, things that are being put into the environment don't go away, right? We're starting to learn that no matter what it is, whether it's chemicals in the 50s, whether it's the oil and gas industry putting rust inhibitors, it's not gonna go away. And we're gonna have to deal with the health effects afterwards. So if you look at manganese, luckily manganese had a biologics solution, right? So we're able to spend a lot of money to build a treatment plant that's gonna solve the problem. It's actually an inconvenient truth, the 0.2 parts per billion. That's an inconvenient truth. When the public health in California came up with that, that was inconvenient. They can't get it down to that. I mean, their only solution is reverse osmosis or getting other sources of water. So, I mean, the reason it's 10 parts per billion, like the citizens that are bringing this forward are, is because of lobbying, right? They can't get it down to 0.02 parts per billion, so we're just gonna settle at something that's not related to health, that's gonna try to bring it down to a certain level. And, you know, when we look at things where we say there's no proof of harm, so we say, well, if we start looking statistically, and we say there's no proof of harm at certain levels beyond the health goal of the 0.02, that's something I think we need to take a look at, because it's not proven safe either, right? So that's not a high bar to fill when you start looking across and saying, well, we can't prove that any of these levels is causing anything. It's gonna be very hard to do unless you have large studies doing that. So really, I'm trying to mention it that I think this is a wake-up call as far as we've tried to stop things at the source. We don't want them to go into the environment. We don't want plastic going into the environment. Everybody's got microplastics in their bodies now, right? So plastics don't go away. So I think it's something that we're, as citizens, are gonna constantly bring up things, trying to look at how we keep things from getting into our environment, keep chemicals from getting into our environment, so we can healthier thing. And this hexavalent chromium problem is probably not gonna go away anytime soon. So just to get to my point at the end, I was wondering if the Board of Health had any plans to kind of have a page on it. I know we did a manganese page where, you know, citizens could follow this kind of like long type project, and I think they did a great job. The Water Department did a great job keeping everybody informed. I know hexavalent chromium, they've been keeping everybody informed. But I didn't know if there was a way to have like a hexavalent chromium page that, because if we know this is gonna be here for the next 5, 10 years, like, or whatever it is, timeline, that citizens would have a place to go. I think the citizens are trying to bring attention to it, make sure we have enough information. I think the Water Department does a great job of that. But I'm hoping that the Board of Health can start to get into that, because I think it's a health problem too, right? So the Water Department has to kind of juggle health and, you know, the actual logistics of delivering water. So I'm just hopeful that either that the Board of Health can start to provide information, maybe have a place and provide that to the public. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. If it's really brief, because we're starting to run short of time.
Yeah, I think I talked too long, sorry, Steve.
I just wanted to bring to your attention that there is a difference between chronic and acute effect. And in this particular case, the limit of 50 and 100 was actually done based on studies that were acute, which means that they were done over a period of 30 to 60 days. There are only 2 agencies that have done it from a chronic perspective, one of which is the California EPA, which set the 0.02 limit. And the second is the Agency of Toxic Substances, which actually advises, that came up with a limit of 15 ppb. Both these limits are actually in the systematic review protocol that has been released by the EPA last week. And the EPA is actually actively studying this whole issue to come up with new limits. So I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention that the chronic can be very different from acute, which means that if you keep on ingesting the 3 ppb over 60, 70 years, that would be a definite health hazard compared to just ingesting it for a couple of years.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, thank the board members, and also I express my thanks to the citizen group, because I think they've done a very great job on that. I have nothing negative about it, and we'd just like to work with them and everyone else to try to get ourselves down as close to zero as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
So, since this is a town meeting warrant article, this issue, you know, may come up at town meeting, so does the board want to express whether they're supportive or not? This article?
I would respectfully request more time before I come up with an opinion. I'd like to look at the medical literature if I can find stuff and review a little bit. So I don't think, we may not be able to say today if we're gonna if the Board of Health would be in support or not in support.
Well, that's a reasonable position, because we can, I think that there is more to look at. I think, to me, I don't think there's much of a question that hexavalent chromium should be minimized to all possible ways, but it seems to me also that the town water and sewer department is doing everything feasible to do that. So
Right.
I guess ultimately the question will come down to, is it the best way to approach this via a town meeting warrant article, or just working with the water department to continue what they're doing in an aggressive way? But if you feel more comfortable studying the issue more, then we could just say at town meeting that the board would like to study this issue more, and we don't have a current position.
Well, I think my intent would be by the time of the town meeting that I will have something more to say. And so perhaps at town meeting, we'll be there.
Well, I'm wondering, is there a plan for 6.4 to be decommissioned at some point? Because I saw that 6.1 and 6.3 are, but
I think at this time, we're gonna try to minimize what we can, and if everything works, and then we have that new well on, we find that we don't have the plume coming any closer, yeah, then we would try to eliminate. But that's still, I still have to go through regulatory agencies, the DEP, to take a well offline. We just can't do it ourselves. You know, I can either have it offline or as an emergency standby. So I'd probably keep it as an emergency standby would be my guess, because you ever needed a source of water on a short-term basis, yeah. So our goal is to minimize the best we can, and if we can, take them off out there. But we'll have to see as time goes on, how that progresses.
Right, because this motion says retire offending wells, including 6.4 immediately.
right.
Right.
But I just wanted to hear what the water department's plan was.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
that.
yeah, we
Okay.
can't just retire 3 wells immediately over there. You have to have some replacement source over
Right.
there, especially with summertime usage. If other wells go down, you're up over there, so.
Right,
We're
so,
looking, yeah, we're looking at all different ways we can
so
do
if
that.
that's pure, if that's what this motion is, then to my mind, we can't recommend that, we can't support that, because Bob can't do that.
Right.
Well, that was my position
Right.
also, that I think in order to have a position, the board has to vote on it as a board before a town meeting. So I
Yeah,
think
I
it
mean, I
was,
just feel like logistically, it's not,
It's not feasible.
yeah,
Right. Right.
okay.
yeah. I do like the idea of a page, though, an information page for the public, like what we did with the manganese. I think
Sure.
that would be good.
Who manages that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes, Karen.
I asked first.
Because basically, we took what Bob had already crafted and just plopped it on our page, but then we started getting the questions, and I am not versed in hexagons, and I can't even pronounce it.
I think the best thing is just to put a link to their page, because
Yeah.
they're the public water
Right.
supply
That's right, yeah,
operator.
right.
We're not.
Yes.
So if there's like a link, they have the information and the expertise. That's the most expeditious, I didn't say it right, but expedient way.
That seems
So,
reasonable, yeah.
I have to be at another meeting.
Okay.
I'm wondering if I can just give the local report. 'cause,
I
when-
can do it.
I get
Oh,
some.
never mind
I
that
have
part.
some, she'll do, you know, you don't
The
have to
other
jump to the Alliance part, but I'd like to give Abby's report. She had an appointment. If that's before you get into the next segment, if you're
Yeah,
done with
let's
this.
run a
Well,
wrap,
be-
let's
be-
wrap this up.
Before we do that, though, we need to wrap up this one.
Yeah.
So,
That's what I meant.
so does someone want to make a motion to indicate that the Board of Health does not support the current warrant article?
Yes, motion made to say that the Board of Health will not be in support of this current motion.
A second.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. So, Phil, would you like to
Okay,
make a
Phil.
brief report?
Just gonna speak to the Abby's report, which is this one. Been really busy, again, with, our normal food. We have, several new, food establishments, progressing. Barbecue Land, Ty and I basically has had their, pre-operation inspection. They want to use a window, an outdoor patio, that's in zoning board of appeals. They could open pending that, but they can't use that window. Camp season is starting, swimming pool season, bathing season, all the summer type inspections. But I do want to bring your attention to the increase in nuisance calls since the snow's melted. We're basically spending a quarter of our inspector resource time basically chasing down, stuff in people's yards. Very time consuming. We brought in, Mike, actually he's working today, Colby part-time. I've been doing some cases, Julie's been doing cases, so it's like seasonal.
Yep.
Snow, and sometimes it's just, someone's doing a building project and someone next door doesn't like what it looks like, or I had someone has bicycles and there's rabbits in the bicycles, okay, so, but then there's other ones where, might be actually a public health hazard. So again, that's seasonal. Everyone wants their pool open by Memorial Day, so that's always interesting to juggle. Water department will start testing the water, Sunset Beach. And then Abby's doing a practicum, actually working with City of Worcester, and then we'll be working with the water department, looking at, different water testing sites, why they do it there, response plans, protocols, on both sides. So she's doing that for her master's practicum, so we're glad that she's able to do that, and also, we share that lake. So, any other specific, those kind of questions? Okay.
Thank you, thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, so we will continue with the agenda under item 6, review and discuss Article 20, Town Property Pesticide Reduction Bylaw, requested by Brian Moss, 16 Ruthven Circle, Shrewsbury, Mass. 01545. Brian?
Great, thanks. Brian Moss, 16 Ruthven Circle, Town Meeting Member Precinct 8. Thanks for having me here today to help be able to explain my article. First, I thought this time I would go a little bit more over the logistics of the article than some of the previous meetings that I had. There is an effort across the state right now for certain organizations. They're looking at ways to reduce pesticide usage, and one of the ways, the gold standard way of doing that is you can't ban pesticides because the state preempts all of the towns. So the towns can't say, you ban this pesticide or ban that pesticide. It's done at the state level. But we can set a direction, a positive direction for the town. As you can see, we're talking about toxins and contaminants and chemicals, and one of the, throughout the meeting today. And so this is just one way to try to address that. Now, that's not to say, similarly to the other article, that this isn't meant to say the town isn't doing enough or this or that. I don't have all the information yet. I've asked the town to provide like a pesticide usage summary. I don't have that yet. So hopefully we'll have that before town meeting, but from what I heard in other meetings, the town manager did report that the town has taken steps, in this positive direction. So definitely thankful to the group that maintains the properties that they have been doing that. I don't have all the details. Hopefully I'll have that and have a better way to but I think in saying that, the logistics of this bylaw is not to, prevent them, the town's property management techniques is not to prevent them, right? It's not to say you can't use something that you already use, but it's to say that organic first approach. So really, this is based off of the city of Irvine, California. I think they have like 100,000 people in the city. What they decided to do, and that was a couple of years ago, is they said, we're gonna take an organic first approach. So that means we're gonna look at everything we use today, and then we're going to try to do an alternative that's organic, that's not synthetic. And so they, it seemed that they were able to do this pretty quickly, and they were able to do alternatives and replace all of the synthetic pesticides with organic alternatives, and so they have been. Now that's not to say it has to be 100%, so it's to use organic pesticides first, then use a least to most toxic approach. So, I mean, I'm sure the town, from what I heard in the other meetings, is doing a great job to try to reduce using pesticides. It's probably trying to not use the worst of the pesticides. So this actually seems to fit in from what I've heard or gathered from some of the meetings that it just is giving you that approach. So if they use organic pesticides, it was mentioned in some of the meetings, and I wanted to address it here, is that gonna cause a bad health effect, right? I have to use this organic pesticide, it's not working, it's gonna cause a health impact. Our people that are managing the properties, their hands are tied, and now we have a health problem, you know? So the bylaw had a negative impact, but what this is trying to say is it never prevents that. One of the things, honestly, what I came in as I was trying to think, there's a lot, and I'll talk about in a little bit, is there's a lot of news around different pesticides in the news and a lot of the dangers with them, specific ones, and I didn't want to just say, let's not use that one and tie some hands on that and say, when they might have to use something worse. So in this approach, it would be if the organic pesticide is not working, right, then it says that they can use the others. Of course, we don't want to just jump to the EPA level 2 danger pesticide, and maybe, I don't even know if we're using any of those, probably not. But, you know, it's trying to show you that you're always gonna do a thoughtful step approach to least toxic to most toxic. Now, why would we use organic? You know, I gave you some endorsement letters, so the Mass Sierra Club endorses Article 20. One of the things that, you know, we just talked about natural gas infrastructure and saying there's health effects to natural gas, and Mass Sierra Club is trying to say synthetic pesticides are made from synthetic petrochemicals, right, are derived from fracked natural gas. So here we are saying there's health impacts to natural gas, and we might be using pesticides that are derived from natural gas, fracked natural gas. So there could be, the Mass Sierra Club is saying synthetic pesticides they have health effects from where the source of where you're even getting them from, to the transportation of them, to creating them, to using them, to, you know, being persistent in the environment for a long time. Where organic, you might see that they're using citrus peels to make a certain organic pesticide. Also NOFAMAS, Northeast Organic Farming Association, Massachusetts, is endorsing Article 20 and calling it, you know, it's saying that this is using a gold standard organic first approach. Again, citing that, you know, they have, you know, pesticide, the word side is really, you know, a word meaning, you know, toxic to life, right? I mean, if you use a pesticide, so using organic pesticide is, while it may be acutely, it's, you know, its persistence in the environment will be less. So as we talked about before, is the more we put stuff in the environment, the more we have to deal with it later. So we might be able to spray it now, and later that might persist and cause problems in the environment. And also the Toxic Action Center is also endorsing our Article 20. So, you know, why did this come up? If you look at the news recently, in the news you'll find that glyphosate, which is marketed under like Monsanto's Roundup, is in the news because that company was found guilty of hiding the fact that they knew their glyphosate-based herbicide product Roundup could cause cancer. There were two plaintiffs, and they both had claims that their use of the herbicide caused them to develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma. There are 1,000 others in the pipeline. In the first trial, the jury awarded the plaintiff $289 million, and the judge redacted to $80 million. Johnson, who was the 46, is the father of 3, worked as a groundskeeper and pest manager for the school district in Benicia, a suburb just north of San Francisco. The city of Miami passed a resolution banning the use of glyphosate herbicide on city property. They were using 4,800 gallons in the city, so they were able to mitigate away from using glyphosate. So this is in the news. Large cities are taking action. I felt that rather than trying to pinpoint one pesticide, that why not, which if they needed to use glyphosate, I don't want to cause any health problems, so you know, if they need to use it on something, is to try to use something else. There are other types of things like Avenger, which is based off citrus oils, or there's other techniques like goats. You can have them eat the poison ivy. These cities and towns are using those methods. The city of Napa, California has banned it as well. So why is reducing pesticides important? Well, if you look at Massachusetts has towns that have already done this. So you have, in a similar way, so you have, town of Wellesley has done an organic pesticide policy, and the town of Marblehead's been since 2005. The town of Wellesley actually started doing it in 2011 for most of their parks and schools, and have now done it town-wide as far as 2016. So the Wellesley Board of Health, in one of the statements, I gave you some of the documents there, they worked with the Natural Resource Council in their town to bring this forward, and one of their statements was, in one of their documents, please consider the dangers of toxic chemicals to children, pets, and the environment, and learn how to eliminate the unnecessary use of these chemicals, just as the town of Wellesley has. So, they say a growing body of evidence in the scientific literature shows that pesticide exposure can adversely affect neurological, respiratory, immune, and endocrine systems in humans, even at low levels. And so even some of the folks on their boards were testifying to the state, because there's different efforts now to try to allow towns to manage pesticides on their own, right? We think something's toxic, we want to ban that from our town, it's polluting our water. We can't do that today. There are some efforts. So they actually had a woman, Regina, I'm not going to say it right, Lepec, MD, Master of Public Health, was the chair of the Natural Resources Commission. She was an associate professor of medicine, Harvard Medical School, and Mass General Hospital. And she had said, Wellesley residents are concerned about pesticide use in our community. We wish to protect the health of our children and the health of our subsurface aquifer that provides our drinking water. As elected officials, we have responded to this concern by enacting an organic integrated pest management program on all town property. So what I'd like to close with is there's other towns that are actually taking this on in smaller bits too, like you have the city of Springfield doing organic land care for their parks. You have Natick doing organic land care. There's lots of towns that are trying to take action, including Lowell, Marblehead, Natick, Newton, Northampton, Springfield, Townsend, Wellesley, and Westford. So I think the trend is going to be to, and I think the town is, from what I've heard in the other board meetings, and as I wait for that report, and from what I can hear, it sounds like they've already been on a path of trying to address this in some way, and hopefully we'll hear more about that as we go. So I'm thankful to them that they may have already been doing that. It'll be great to hear the specifics. And I think this is something that logistically is just trying to set an approach at a town level to say, just like we heard before, as you look at the contaminants in the environment, if we don't have to, right, if there are alternatives, like these other cities, if the city of Irvine, California can do it, why can't we? So thank you, and I hope you support the article, and please feel free to ask me any questions.
Okay, any questions from the board? No? Okay, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to comment on this issue? Yes?
Morning.
Morning.
I'm Kevin Esposito. I'm the division manager for the Parks and Cemetery Division. This is Nick Repetka. He's the Highway Division Manager. Keith Ballinger, he's the Building Department Division Manager. And in response, we would just like to say that we've drastically reduced our usage over the last 3 years. The state actually ran a program in 2017 where they would take any of your pesticides for free, and we really got rid of all of ours. We don't use Roundup anywhere. We're really treating 2018, we used 35.75 gallons of algicide in Dean Park. That was over 5 applications. And the other spot would be Jordan Pond, which we did no application. We do have a lake management company that samples for us, and they have a biologist on staff and licensed applicators that come in and do these applications throughout the year. our division itself, we have 2 licensed applicators. We have 1 organic land care professional. The highway department has a licensed applicator for pesticides. What we have treated for are bees nest, and that's very rare, and it's only if it poses a safety hazard, and it's strictly wasps and hornets. So, again, we're really down to minimal usage on anything. We're not applying anything but strict fertilizer to our fields. We have no herbicides mixed in them or pre-emergence or anything like that. And I think Keith can speak more for the buildings department with the schools.
Again, Keith Baldinger, Public Buildings Division Manager. So the town of Shrewsbury has 19 town-owned buildings. That includes municipal and school buildings. It's about 971,000 square feet of building. In 2018, there was, the Public Buildings Division did use a herbicide similar to Roundup. That was applied by a licensed contractor. We used 2.75 gallons in the town of Shrewsbury, and that was to treat poison ivy along some walking paths and the edges of some of the playground areas in Woodlines. And now with the Public Buildings Division being part of Public Facilities now, merging with the Parks Division, we have established the policy of no pesticide use for any of our properties for, as far as Roundup or poison ivy mitigation. The only other type of treatments that we use is for rodents and ants in our kitchens, in our schools. This is all, our buildings are all scheduled for inspection 4 times a year by a licensed pest exterminator. And for the rodents and mice, they typically use snap traps or glue traps or an enclosed bait station. We don't do any spraying, anything like that. And then there has been some ant treatment, and they use a product. It's a gel product that is specifically placed. It's kind of like comes out of a syringe, but so if you could equate it to a caulking gun. And we have about 4 ounces of use of that in 2018. The kitchen staff in our buildings, I read all the reports from the exterminator, and they're always amazed at how clean the spaces are. So there's very little, not very often that they find anything or have to treat for anything. And like I said, we don't do any other spraying or anything else around any of our other buildings.
As far as the highway division is concerned, we roadside mow. That's been the process we're undertaking for a number of years. No herbicides have been applied by my division, and since I've taken over, and even in the past, to my institutional knowledge, roadside mowing has been the cultural practice we've used, with no herbicides or any pesticides used.
Okay. Any questions?
So do you think that this motion would be impactful to what is being done now?
No, because we're already doing this.
It sounds like you're already.
And we've been doing it for a few years now.
Yeah.
And we had the same goal, was to eliminate the use of those products, and we have done that on our own.
Thank you.
I mean, I think I like the idea of formalizing it, because if there's turnover, somebody else comes in, they will know that this is how we do it.
Okay. Any further questions of these gentlemen? Jeff?
One concern that we do have is mosquito control, Central Mass Mosquito Control. We've asked them the same question, and that will adversely affect what mosquito control will be allowed to do. Even though it's not a town agency, even though it's not a town function, they will still be subject to the bylaw, and therefore would not be able to spray mosquitoes. To them, that is a major concern. They would have to abide by the bylaw. And the other thing, dealing with our, as Kevin mentions, we deal with Solitude, which does our lakes, and they would have to use a different chemical, which they are not, they're saying will have to be done more often, significantly more expensive, and not as effective. And the algae that they're treating for are toxic. So in Dean Pond and Jordan Pond, those are toxic algae that we're trying to eliminate.
Okay, thank you.
May I address the concern, just because I have an answer to this?
Well, it's just not a public hearing, so you've had your chance to make your statement.
So West Nile and Tripoli, what would not be treated as effectively with organic,
Mosquito control, so they would not be able to treat?
period?
Because they would have to use, they would either have to use a different product, which actually is, according to mosquito control, is more toxic to humans, and it's not as effective.
But I thought this wasn't supposed to limit, like, if
Necessary.
if it's necessary and it's the only option and the best option.
Right, but the bylaw requires them to use that first, and if it doesn't work, then to go to the next product. But mosquito control did say if they, what way they read it, they would not be able to use what they're currently using,
But you said the alternative is more toxic to humans?
according to mosquito control, or potentially more toxic. If they use an organic product.
So you're saying because an organic product exists, as this bylaw is written, they're mandated to start with that organic product, which.
That's correct.
Which
That's,
they're
at
saying
least
is
that's
more
according to
toxic
them,
and
yes.
less effective. As
Okay,
opposed to going to number 5, because that's the better thing.
so in
I
terms,
wish we
in
had
terms
them,
of,
do you have any,
We do have a document that we did receive from them.
I don't think,
We didn't get it.
I didn't bring with me, I thought I did, but I didn't.
Jeff, can you forward those to me, and I'll be happy to pass them along?
Carrie, can you copy me on that, please?
And as well as Kevin and Keith,
I think they
and
are,
Angela, absolutely.
it came from Angela.
It did come from Angela, yes, thank you.
So the other towns that have implemented this in Massachusetts, what are they doing to address mosquitoes?
very quickly, Mr. Moss.
Make any statement other than.
So if you look at Wellesley and Marblehead, both have organic first policies. They both are still members of their mosquito control project. And I am seeking details about how they're doing it, but they have not pulled out of it. They're actually still using it. So that might be information. I'm not saying that I have it for you, but maybe something you might want to seek out and get an answer to if that's something.
Yep.
Okay, well, I think my position is that I don't think that it's necessarily the best idea to approach this via bylaw because it is very constricting, as we've heard. I'd rather see this issue addressed, one-on-one perhaps with the various departments to do what's best rather than potentially tie hands in what they can and cannot do. So for me, it's also a matter of procedure that I'm just don't feel comfortable with codifying this as a bylaw. Now, do the other members feel comfortable taking a position at this point?
the mosquito thing is really bothersome to me. People get West Nile and Tripoli every year and people die from it. So that piece is bothersome to me. But I like what Jenny says, it would be nice to have a formal, I just think we have to.
Well, that's why I think it would be good to check with these other towns and what they're doing, because
For their language of their motion or at town meeting, is there an amendment that says,
Or how they're
Right.
treating mosquitoes
are they
with
using the
a
same?
different, yeah.
Yeah, I just think I think that's a real concern.
well, let's get some clarity on that and see what these other towns are doing
We gotta
to
get-
address that, because like you said, they haven't pulled out of the pest control.
The organic, start first with organic.
Well, no, what I'm saying is if they are,
And they're still doing their
they're still
mosquitoes.
doing
Yeah,
the regular spraying.
yeah. Who reaches out for that?
We can do that.
reach out to them and see what they're
Well, I'm
doing?
gonna talk to Tim that runs the mosquito control program. We work with him all the time.
Okay.
So I'd like to see the letter and then follow up with him, and then discuss how the other communities, like, if they're, I would like to see other bylaws, the
Yeah.
way that they're written, because I am concerned too about this excluding them and also about the water treatment piece that you mentioned. So I think that we can take a look into that.
So town meeting is in a couple of weeks.
May 20th.
Well, I will be away on vacation, but my counterpart Phil, you're welcome. Phil can, you know Tim, well, we'll look into it.
So are you saying that you would prefer not to take a position at this point in time?
I'm saying that I will not support the motion until I get more clarity about the mosquitoes. So right now, I'm not supporting the motion.
I'm not taking a position because I want to get more clarity.
I do have the statement from mosquito control if you want me
Okay.
to read that.
Yeah, go ahead.
After checking with their legal department, they say if this goes through as written, we would have to follow the bylaw on municipal property. Besides the delay in application that would result, I see a few other issues. One, organic pesticides are not always the best alternative. There is an organic adulticide that has an ecological and human health profile that is more detrimental than the product we currently use, which is Zenovex E4, which is a reduced-risk pesticide. If they are referring to exempt products, for example, 24B products like garlic oil, rosemary, etc., then I would have concerns because they are exempt. No testing has been done, and non-target effects on or human health. And the signal word usage has changed. The new GHS standard only uses danger and warning. And if an exemption from mosquito control could be written in, that would be helpful. That was from Timothy Deschamps from
Yep.
Mosquito Control.
Can we get a copy of that
Yeah,
for the record?
Carrie's gonna ship
Okay.
it out to us.
So,
No, I will reiterate, one of the reasons, I think we mentioned this before, the city of Worcester did finally join the mosquito control
Last year.
was the presence of tiger mosquito, which is not native to our area, but the tiger mosquito is the one that carries the Zika virus. Prevalent in the shipping yards, comes in containers. I mean, those containers come from all over. Actually, DPH is the one that brought that to the city's attention. Don't want to establish that particular mosquito in this area. It's a day biter, not a nighttime biter, dusk to dawn. It's a quick biter also. Bang, comes in, doesn't buzz around. So, in public health, risk assessment, you gotta balance that. Last year, we had more West Nile virus hits across the state, set a record. As you mentioned, the mortality rate for triple E, which we've had, that's native to southeast a lot, but we've been getting it in the red maple swamps, which are very prevalent around here. Thing with triple E is, they tend to be in, swampy groves, so, you just can't, go in there and do a spray like you normally would, so the mosquito control folks, I mean, they really do most of their work, and that's the same thing with integrated pest management. You're on the prevention side, and it's, you build up from there, so they do a lot, the larviciding that they do, just knock the population down, number one. Public education, very often, someone may think that the wetlands over there is making the mosquitoes around your house, but very often it's coming from your roof gutter that you haven't cleaned out, your watering can that you haven't used in 3 months, your 5-gallon pail, tires, they do tire pickups.
The spraying is actually like the last resort.
Yeah.
Just as, I mean, we became very involved with mosquitoes last year in Worcester, so, it's really all, like Phil said, the preventative stuff, but there's a lot of residents that will call for that service. It's not just, you know, we find out there's a positive hit for a mosquito with West Nile virus, and then they just blast everything. It's very it's, you know, a geographical area, et cetera, but, so we'll talk with Tim, and then we'll talk to some of the other communities that are outside of the Central Mass Mosquito Control Program, and then get that, information over to you prior to the town meeting.
So,
I'm a not support as the motion is written.
but would you be ready to vote to not support it, or would you prefer to wait until town meeting?
I'll vote right now not to support as written.
Okay, in which case that would be,
But then Jenny might,
I'm choosing not to take a position. I
not
wanna
a
get more
position, so
information.
we're certainly gonna not unanimously support,
right.
right?
When I did a finance committee, which is an option, a substitute motion, to say we could have exclusions like mosquito control project.
No, I think we need to leave it as is right now.
You may come back to, you might go to, I don't know the
I
process.
mean, I still can go with substitute motion to town meeting, so it's
You-
an
You
option.
you
you
could.
probably can, I think right now we got what we got.
Okay, so, let's see. Do we have a motion to not support this article?
I think we have a motion that Board of Health is not unanimously supporting. Board of Health is not unanimously supporting this.
Well, yeah, you can make the motion and then do the vote.
Okay, so I'll make a,
Town meeting?
can we make a what?
Can we wait until town meeting to
We would have,
decide?
we would have to have
Something
like a meeting agenda posted and actually have a Board of Health meeting in order to do that. So it's either now or,
Do you want, is there a way that everybody gets to say what their vote is? Is that,
Yeah, well, I just feel like it would be good to get more information and clarity on this.
Jeff?
It is possible for you to post a meeting for, say, 6:45 the night of town meeting, and then you, as could vote. Board of Selectmen do that, Finance Committee does that on certain articles, which they don't have enough information yet, and they will wait till the night of town meeting. Planning Board does the same thing. They will hold just for the purpose of taking a vote.
Yeah, we have issued meeting agendas before. As you say, just prior to town meeting, the board, whatever it is, has its brief meeting. So if you're more comfortable with that,
Yes, I would be.
we could leave it at having a quick Board of Health meeting prior to town meeting by posting an agenda.
okay, so let's do
So
that.
that it's, so that it's
Let's do that.
public meeting.
Okay,
Okay.
do we need a motion for that?
I don't think so.
No,
Okay.
Mary's shaking her head no.
No. No, she's like, no.
Okay, so we'll leave it at that. And the last item is review and act on the report from the Central Mass Regional Public Health Alliance. And we have Karen today.
I know we're running, late, so I'm just gonna ask if you have any questions about the report, otherwise I'm not gonna go through it.
I don't.
I didn't think so.
I don't.
So that's my response.
I can make a motion to accept the report as written.
So the board will read the report.
Okay, I know we're going late, so if there's anything that you have questions on, reach out.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, that was easy.
That's good.
So we have a last item, and that is to review the meeting schedule.
It sounds like we're meeting again on, is it Monday?
So our next, actual meeting will be a town meeting.
Monday,
which is
May 20?
Monday, May 12th at,
12?
as Jeff said,
No, I
6.
thought it was 20th.
20?
I mean, not 12th, 20th.
May 20.
May 20 at 6:45.
Yep.
Okay.
where do we meet at the school?
Yes, it would be
Just
at the
like
middle
in
school.
front, or like just in front? You want to meet it in front
Probably
of the
right
stage?
in front of the stage. I don't know if do we need permission from the moderator for a non-town meeting member to do that? Probably not. I could always find out.
Who's not, Jenny's not?
Not a
What?
town meeting member?
No, not.
Oh, you mean to let her walk up to the front? But we're just gonna,
But this would be before the meeting convenes, so that's true,
Yeah.
yeah.
and in, a meeting, but informal at that, right?
Well, it's formal in that it has a posted agenda,
Yeah.
but this, in order to comply with open meeting law.
Yeah,
Okay,
right, so anybody could join us there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
they could, it's a public meeting, yeah,
Can you do that? Can you do 6:45?
Yeah.
Okay.
okay.
And that's 64 Holden Street, the Shrewsbury High?
No.
No, the,
It's, Oak
Isn't it
Middle.
Oak Middle.
Oak Middle. Oh, never been
Yeah.
there. Okay. So. Okay.
Now, do we want to schedule another
Yep.
regular meeting? I'll call it that.
So we're looking at June?
June? Mid-June?
You gotta squeeze in one more
That would
meeting,
probably be
Maria.
one more for Maria.
Will that be your last?
Yes.
Well,
Um,
I could do the 7th or the 21st.
I can do 21 and 7 also.
Okay, you want to shoot for 21?
Sure.
Sure.
And what time? 8?
8?
8.
Okay.
So, and at this point in time, we're not scheduling the public hearing until we see a draft of the actual regulation that we're going to
Yeah.
be meeting on.
Yep.
Okay,
I mean, I'm pretty sure it's close to what you've seen in the past. I just want to, a lot of times, the tobacco folks at the state, well, you met DJ Wilson, you know him. He and Cheryl Sabara are consultants with the state that write the regulations, the model regs that we ship out. And sometimes they do make little tweaks, and where they support 351 communities and there's only 2 of them, I think I've seen sometimes little tweaks or things don't quite make it onto the letterhead or whatever. So I just want to make sure that we have the most up-to-date and get that to you to take a look at. But it'll just be that one,
right.
not the whole,
Not the whole thing.
Not the whole thing.
not the whole
That-
thing
that's-
with the checklist and all.
No,
You guys
no.
have done that 100 times, so,
Yeah, yeah.
yep.
Okay,
So I'll get that, or Joshin will send that to Kerry and get that out to you, and then if you have any questions, just let me know. Or,
okay,
then we'll set a hearing.
okay, so.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
A second?
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So adjourned.
Aye.